When I was starting out my management journey, I was working with Scrum. Do not clap, it's not a confession. Anyway, we just had this first success of the product that I worked in as a Scrum Master going live. The project was considered lost, but after some rearrangements, we pushed through. Once this product went live, my boss came to me and asked me to scale that experience onto another important product that was struggling at the time. Having achieved my first success in the role, I felt confident that I would be helpful in this new project. Long story short, the Scrum approach that was objectively pretty helpful in the previous project did not fly in that new project that I moved on to. First, I thought it was my problem. Then, I thought that the team was too hesitant to try this new approach out. All of those could be the reasons, but they were not very important. Clearly, there was an elephant in the room we had not addressed yet. Now, during that period, I came across a book called Essential Scrum by Kenneth Rubin. A great book, by the way. As I'm reading the book, right at the start of it, page 6, there is a framework that I had never seen before, and it had this weird name, Cynefin. Kenneth Rubin in his book says, Scrum is not a silver bullet or a magic cure. Scrum can, however, enable you to embrace the changes that accompany all complex product development effort. Then I started analyzing the hot water I was in at work, trying to implement the shiny new framework that landed so well in the other team, but that no one was buying in my current one. My boss told me to implement it anyway, and I had little experience to assess if it would really speed up the delivery process in the first place. It's just a challenge for me. That is why I'm struggling, I thought. But there, the real explanation was, in that book, in front of my eyes, a new framework to assess whether the work domain could actually benefit from implementing Scrum in the first place. Scrum was never fully implemented in that project. We used only some of its ceremonies that were generating value for us at the time. The truth was that the domain that we found ourselves in was not a complex that Scrum would be the perfect fit for, but complicated. The domain of experts, best practices, and known unknowns, so it had the potential to be well thought out from the start, and waterfall approach was the most relevant for that case. It was an expensive lesson for the company, and a matter of luck that I was able to find the explanation why the previous positive experience with Scrum could not be scaled in that new project. Let's now unpack the Cynefin framework, which is going to bring you understanding of the thought process of how to find the best, most effective managerial approach for your work. This approach is going to save you a lot of time and effort trying to use framework that was never meant for your work domains anyway. And by understanding, we are going to refer to this Japanese concept of Shu-Ha-Ri. First, you obey, which means shu. You obey the rules just like I was obeying my boss when he asked me to do Scrum again. Then you detach from the rules. Ha! This is when I started looking for a solution, trying to figure out why the previous approach was not working. And then leave. Re. With the understanding of what was going wrong, I managed to get a bird's eye view on the situation to truly pick the right approach for every project I was presented with. This is when I acquired that critical thinking and was able to figure out things. Plenty of people are stuck at the foundational level of Shu, obeying the system, and only engage in cultural wars, hopping on a bandwagon and either praising a specific managerial approach or hating it uncontrollably. With the Cynefin framework, we are going to leave the cultural war and be able to see managerial approaches as tools fit or not fit for your task. Good leadership is not a one-size-fits-all proposition. Cynefin is a Welsh word, and this is exactly how you pronounce it, by the way. This word means habitat. This sense-making framework was developed in 1999 by Dave Snowden, a Welsh management consultant that worked for IBM at the time. In the 2007 Harvard Business Review article, Dave Snowden, together with Mary Boone, described the framework for the masses. It is a relatively short read, around 25 minutes. In it, Dave and Mary explain that it's a decision-making framework that takes into account the domain, the surroundings, and categorizes it into 4 environments. In some literature, it can also be referred to as clear. Let's imagine that you work in a restaurant. Someone comes in and orders a pasta. You're not going to invent a recipe. You're going to follow the recipe that has already been created by the restaurant's chef. That is an example of a simple domain. You pick the most fitting rule and stick to it. The flow here is to sense, categorize, and respond. This domain is fact-based and dominated by best practices. Be wary of oversimplifying issues, classifying them as simple domain, even though they are not that clear and evident to resolve. Also, Snowden and Boone warn us that working in a clear or simple domain can lead to entrained thinking, and that may result in not seeing the full picture of the problem. They continue. If the context changes at that point, a leader is likely to miss what is happening and react too late. From the managerial standpoint, the most appropriate approach to use would be Kanban. You already figured out the whole thing. You just need to maximize throughput at this point. Say, you have always wanted to build a rocket and launch it into space. Great! You do some research on the internet and find out that there are hard facts that will guide you, but also there are dilemmas about rocket designs, excelling at different things and serving slightly different purposes, whether your purpose could be cost effectiveness, speed, rocket's capacity, and many others. There is no such thing as the best way to build a rocket, but there are certainly many good ways to build one. It is a domain of experts and known unknowns. There are way more decisions to be made, but you can account for them while trying to plan out your next rocket build. This is where at least one right answer exists. Sometimes you have to choose from a number of them. In this domain, you sense, analyze, and then respond. Snowden and Boone point out that in this domain, analysis paralysis can occur. Doing too much research about that part of the rocket you are working on can hold you down. To help leaders and experts approach decision-making more creatively, Snowden and Boone suggest working in unfamiliar environments. This is the domain that waterfall methodologies usually excel at. In a complex environment, right answers cannot be easily found. In this domain, we can understand why things happen only in retrospect. Instructive patterns, however, can emerge if the leader conducts experiments that are safe to fail. That is why instead of attempting to impose a course of action, leaders must patiently allow the path forward to reveal itself. Here, you probe, then sense, and then respond. There are unknown unknowns. There is a fog of war. You need to figure out a pattern in a complex system and move from there. Leaders who try to impose order in a complex context will fail, but those who set the stage, step back a bit, allow patterns to emerge, and determine which ones are desirable will succeed. Some of the many examples could be battlefields, markets, ecosystems. Here is where, if you conduct an analysis, by the time you have done the analysis, the situation would have already changed, which deems your analysis irrelevant. The concern that Snowden and Boone point out in their 2007 article is the temptation to fall back into traditional command and control management styles to demand fail-safe business plans with defined outcomes. Then they go on to say, leaders who don't recognize that a complex domain requires a more experimental mode of management may become impatient when they don't seem to be achieving the results they were aiming for. They may also find it difficult to tolerate failure, which is an essential aspect of experimental understanding. Here is where agile methodologies truly shine, because they allow you to build experimental environment that will highlight the existing patterns which will let you navigate. The relationships between cause and effect are impossible to determine because they shift constantly and no manageable patterns exist, only turbulence. This is the realm of unknowns, unpredictability, and randomness. This is a pattern-based domain. Here, the pattern is to act first to establish order, then sense where stability is present and from where it is absent, and then respond by working to transform the situation from chaos to complexity, where the identification of emerging patterns can both help prevent future crises and discern new opportunities. A prime example of a chaotic environment would be a cyber attack. First step in a situation like that is to shut everything down to stabilize the situation, win time, and start investigating what went wrong and how to fix it. Another example is a fire in wild nature. First, you isolate the area, gather a team, see the scope of the disaster, and act from there. By that time, you would already be operating in a complex or complicated domain. Surely, the domains that we have just covered are not static. The situations evolve, and the work environments change. You figure out a chaotic job and therefore transform it to a complex job. More becomes known, you may get more computational power to analyze, and the next thing you know, you are already in the complicated environment. More time goes by. Now you have figured out everything, came up with the rules and procedures for every possible turn of events, so now you're in a simple or clear domain. But something goes wrong and you lose your best expert who knew everything, and you are back to chaotic or complex environments at best. Taking this knowledge into account, now you can sail the murky waters of work planning and leadership, knowing where you are, where you would like to be, and where you may end up being if you are not too careful. Suppose a new project, team, or company comes around. First, I always look at the nature of work, or in other words, the domain that I'm facing. Is the work repetitive? Does work involve creativity and innovation? Does the new work involve unknown unknowns? How prevalent are the risks? Is there any historical data about the work we're about to do? What would the most effective managerial approach be based on our findings? These questions place us in a great position to start with an understanding of the situation in mind, not just believing the stakeholders and building or adopting a framework that is being copied from somebody else. Snowden and Boone show a real-life example of work transcending all the existing work domains at once. During the Palatine murders of 1993, Deputy Chief Gassier faced 4 contexts at once. He had to take immediate action via the media to stem the tide of initial panic by keeping the community informed, which meant chaotic environment. He had to help keep the department running routinely and according to established procedure, which meant simple environment. He had to call in experts, which meant complicated. And he had to continue to calm the community in the days and weeks following the crime, which was a complex environment. Many leaders lead effectively, though usually in only 1 or 2 domains, not in all of them, and few, if any, prepare their organizations for diverse contexts. Ever since I encountered the misjudgment of the work nature for the first time in my career, I went on to address those and fix the problems that were the results of those misjudgments many times later on for other companies and teams as well. The Cynefin framework, more than 2 decades after its creation, is still criminally underused. Instead, we fight in these cultural crusades, defending or attacking processes, tools, procedures, methodologies, and technologies. Congratulations! Now you have the right method to see the full picture and pick a tool for your job, not to twist every other variable to squeeze in the framework that was never meant to be used for that application. Share this video with your colleagues so that we get more educated and we'll have to spend less time in cultural wars. It has been me, Valentin Drogin. Press the like button if you liked the video, subscribe to my channel so that you won't miss what's coming next. Thanks to everyone for the support, it truly motivates me to move forward and teach you more lessons. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. If you are having difficulties with Agile, management in general, business analysis and other topics, make sure to reach out to me via my website valentindrogin.com.